This Wednesday is St. Nicholas's Day. A few years ago, I purchased this painted icon of St. Nicholas of Myra, the wonder worker and bishop of the 4th century, and it goes up in our house every Advent season. The intention was to place it out only on the 6th of December, St. Nicholas's feast day, leaving it until the new year. Except that's not what happens in our house. I'm obviously not in my house right now. Rather than make this video sat in my living room, I thought our church would be a bit more interesting. So we put this icon out now way before the 6th of December. In truth, searching for a bit of cheer, we do our Christmas decorating earlier and earlier each year. It's fair to say he's become part and parcel of the season's decorations, with the tree, the tinsel, and the star. And funny enough, so it dawned on me as I came to make this video, that is precisely what has happened to the great Saint Nick himself. He's been jumbled in with the trappings of the season. On the surface, a bit of a decoration, mixed into that box labelled baubles and fairy lights. So much so that by now, I believe so few Christians indeed even notice the deeper significance or the origins of Santa Claus. And yet, this ought not necessarily dishearten, a point which I hope this video will successfully make. It's fair to say we don't notice Saint Nick because the image of Santa Claus or Father Christmas, now a folk figure and perhaps in some ways an emblem of Western consumerism, seems to have strayed so far away from his original icon, captured in this stark, even stern Orthodox expression of my own icon. I find this somehow captivating and frankly good for my modern eyes, far more used to the saccharine. St. Justin Martyr, the early Christian apologist, surveyed his Roman pagan world of the 2nd century and commented that despite its depravity, he in fact saw seeds of the Logos in that culture. That is, seeds of the principle of divine reason, the knowledge which enlightens all people, as St. John said, of Jesus Christ, who is the principle of divine reason in the flesh. St. Justin saw these seeds scattered all around, waiting perhaps for that baptismal water to awaken them. Of course, Justin was martyred for such observations, a sobering reminder of how the gospel first spread. But I think what we call Santa Claus, in a curious way, also represents a seed of the Logos. All of the greatest saints point up to Christ, but stick with me, because on reflection, I've come to realize that I've made a number of videos and written a number of articles on my blog about what we may dare to call seeds of the Logos again, such as the St. George figure in our heroic stories, the one who gives himself to save his bride and to destroy the dragon. It's ultimately Christ who we see within George of Lydda, the martyr of the Diocletian persecutions, and then George within endless pop culture tales. I believe we've seen seeds of the Logos here in our time. These stories have acted as church for generations, remaining fertile decades beyond their cinematic run due to streaming and home video. In drawing parallels with what St. Justin saw, I understand I'm straying precisely from the linear narrative of Christ's parable of the sower. There was no germination mentioned, but I think it's coherent. As Christianity has receded over the last 100 or so years, one can clearly see how Christ has left little markers to help us not discover the way, as in St. Justin's time, but rather rediscover the way and find a path home. Trees that grew during what was Christendom have seeded and left new potential. Perhaps you're still with me, or perhaps you find this all a bit silly. Just how do I connect Santa Claus to a seed of the Logos, a seed of Jesus Christ, the divine word? According to Penguin's Dictionary of the Saints, St. Nicholas of Myra in modern-day Turkey has long been associated with a story of 3 girls whom he saved from prostitution or even from slavery. It's said that one night St. Nicholas passed by their house and threw 3 bags of gold in through their window. The girls' father couldn't provide them with dowries, and so their prospects in that time and place would have been bleak. This may all seem a far cry from our image of Santa Claus, his name stemming from the Dutch Sinter, for saint, and Nicholas arriving ultimately at Santa Claus. And without a mince pie or a reindeer in sight, this story perhaps peels back the layers to show the St. Nicholas of my icon, a stern-faced bishop in ancient Turkey. There's destitution and even the prospect of prostitution. It's a very dark origin story, if I may use the parlance of modern cinema franchises. But perhaps we should tell it again. Perhaps the church shouldn't be afraid to speak of the darkness if it wishes to grow. After all, we do look to a man nailed to a cross. But this is Advent, not Lent, and over 1600 years on from the mortal life of that famed bishop, we're perhaps first introduced to St. Nicholas in this manner, tucked up in our beds, warm and safe, one December night with mum or dad by our side and a colourful picture book. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And that was originally called A Visit from St. Nicholas by Clement Clarke, and it was penned in 1832. It's certainly the first way I encountered St. Nicholas as a boy, and my own daughter has just been introduced to Father Christmas in the same way this week. Of course, it's not a stretch to see the origins of Santa Claus in the original story of the three peasant girls and the free gift from St. Nicholas. Likewise, in our modern tale, the children await the one who will bring the gift that prolongs innocence. Our faith is one of salvation, of God bringing light into the darkest places, of humanity participating in that work of saving and redeeming. And if we go with the original story of the dowries and drop the customary cynicism, we see a man who saved children, perhaps barely teenagers. He saved them from a life of intense spiritual and physical darkness. Where sin abounds, grace abounds the more. Yet the world is nonetheless a very dark place. And the more connected we all become, the more it seems to me we seem to grasp this. We save our children for as long as possible from the full realities of that darkness, lest the glow of childhood should flee before time. Today it feels as though it's getting harder to shut out the gloom, and indeed to shut out the works of that ancient serpent, almost banging at the door, as our societies wrestle with crisis after crisis and seek to elevate what is false, and more what is in fact detrimental to human flourishing. And yet, sleigh bells ring. Are you listening? For even in our secular culture, where very little anchors or moors millions of people to a sense of the true, the good, or the beautiful, where many churches lay almost empty, what do we see but that bearded Father Christmas, an image of the gift giver, who works to preserve innocence for that bit longer, liturgically returning year upon year, St. Nicholas, who encourages us to bring a toy, quite literally that which preserves innocence, and a smile to the face of a child. Yet in Clarke's Victorian verse, Santa Claus bears little resemblance to the Christian bishop. He's even referred to as a jolly old elf. Clearly, through the fog of European Reformation, which led to narrative breakdown, fairy tale has taken the place of a medieval saint's apparition. After all, saints were absolutely not to be invoked, so they certainly won't be appearing to people. Pre-Christian elves or fairies, on the other hand, are permitted. Our naturalism has relegated them to the fiction section. Clearly, Santa has departed considerably from the true icon. Nonetheless, I think the icon waits to be rediscovered beneath those layers of sugar. And it seems to me the saint is still preserving that childhood innocence in a time where large parts of society seem bent on burdening the young with all kinds of anxieties. In St. Nicholas, we still have a defender of the children. It was, after all, part of his story from its genesis. And whoever really received a lump of coal from the man in red? The most enduring of Christ's saints reflect his light and radiate that same salvific truth here and forever after in our Christian hope for what is to come. There are, I believe, seeds of the Logos all around our culture, waiting to be watered. Christ and that cloud of witnesses are still at work if we have eyes to see. The veil between heaven and earth is perhaps thinner than we know. As this year draws to an end, I feel, as I know many of you do, that something is happening in our societies. However small, people are talking again about faith as our world seems to sink deeper into the fog and gloom, which cannot be answered and fought with by the mind alone. For the Word didn't become flesh in the grand academies of Athens, the equivalent perhaps of a Silicon Valley today, but rather it became flesh within a simple young woman, born into the darkness of a stable, as we'll soon be proclaiming again, in our blessed but humble Lady, full of grace. Aye, and therefore be ye merry. Happy St. Nicholas Day, and Merry Christmas.